Item L, presentation Marshfield Utilities building update presented by Nick Kumm, General Manager of Marshfield Utilities.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight I wanted to provide an overall update on our project and also cover some of the items that came up from the joint meeting with you. Since some of you are remote this evening, I just wanted to recognize we have a number of our commissioners here in the audience, Mike Ebro, the Commission President, Paul Kapla, Harry Borgman, and John Schneider. Bear with me for a second. Ing told me how to do this. I'll see if I can get the presentation. I apologize, I wasn't able to send this to the council before the meeting, but I will send it either later tonight or tomorrow morning so you have a copy of it. One of the areas that we talked about during the joint meeting is COVID-19, and obviously that's a hot topic that we're all talking about. We anticipate the new facility will be open to customers once the pandemic is behind us, so it'll change the current situation that we're set up. Another area that was brought up a little bit was the size of the lobby. The design of the lobby has more space to allow our customers to be more socially distanced. Overall, if you wanted to make a comparison between the vestibule and lobby that's out here at City Hall, the design for the new facility is about 20% smaller. And additionally, a considerable amount of the lobby space is corridors to be able to access the elevator. There's a restroom for customers. There's obviously fountains or water drinking stations. And then there's also a conference room to meet with customers privately. The facility also has provisions for air filtration, and I'm not going to go through each one of these, but those are just some of the items there. Obviously trying to minimize the number of services that employees and customers have to touch so that we can reduce the spread of any of those types of viruses. Obviously adequate space overall for vehicles and staff. And then finally, all these measures should positively position MU for potential future pandemics. Obviously, we hope that doesn't happen, but if indeed it does, it'll put us in a better position. And obviously the seasonal cold and flu that we deal with on a year-to-year basis. PSC rates. I wanted to hit on this briefly. I think many of you know that in the state of Wisconsin, we have 117 different electric utilities that serve the customer, 100% of the customers across the state. So as you can see, we have 81 electric municipalities, just like Marshfield. And within those 81, Marshfield is one of the larger ones. We're in the top 5 as far as there's different numbers you could use based on the size, the customer count, how much sales are, things of that sort. But in general, we're in the top 5 as far as the largest. There's 24 electric cooperatives and 12 investor-owned utilities. I'm going to get into the rates a little bit more on the next couple slides, but even with the potential rate increase that we're talking about, our residential rates are still going to stay within the lowest 10% of the state. You know, our focus with projects of this size has been usually on the rate increase. The information on this slide and the next slide will show how the rates compare to other utilities in the central Wisconsin. So this is kind of just setting up the next slide. Essentially, we took a residential bill. The average residential bill uses 600 kilowatt hours. And what I'm going to demonstrate is the cost in the different utilities for the month of November, so this past month. The rates that I'll show are for the Marshfield Utilities is the rate that includes the building cost in it already. And then the last line there talks about that PCAC charge on everyone's bill. Some months it's credits, some months it's charges. I basically made that 0 for all the utilities just to make sure we had an apples to apples comparison. So here you can see all those lines, and I apologize for the lines, but that's the PSC website that kind of just shows the boundaries of each of the utilities. And what I did is I put Marshfield in the middle, and you can see that dark outline. The black one that denotes our service territory. Just to note, you know, City of Marshfield is about 16 square miles, The electric utility actually serves about 120, 125 square miles. So we go into the rural, so predominantly Wood County, but we do touch Clark and Marathon as well. If you start at the bottom left, and I apologize, the Oakdale cooperative is hidden by the share screen thing there. But if that wasn't there, the number is $96.65. If you go up, you can see Clark Cooperative is the purple, and $97.20. So their average monthly bill is about that. And that makes sense if you think about it. Cooperatives are in the rural, so they do not have the customer count to spread the cost across. So that makes the cost per unit higher than what it does in more urban settings. Then you can see the three large investor-owned utilities. I think one of them was mentioned previously, Wisconsin Public Service. You can see Alliant Energy and Excel. Excel is kind of those blue clouds, if you will. They serve mostly into the west, the north. WPS serves mostly to the north and to the east of us. And Alliant serves to the southwest Wisconsin. You can see their average monthly bill for November would have been around $85 each. Down in the bottom is Wisconsin Rapids, another municipal utility about the same size as us. You can see that their monthly bill is just over $70 per month. And then in the middle, you see our cost, the $63.10. So if you want to compare us to WPS, you can see that on a monthly basis, we're saving our customers $22 over the course of a year. That adds up. Over the course of multiple years, that really adds up. Yeah, go ahead.
Nick, I know the answer to this, but some of the comments that we had prior to the meeting. The fact that we own the utility makes a big difference as far as the rates. It was mentioned about selling to somebody else. Could you address that, please? I know the answer, but I think we need to hear that.
Well, I think there's a number of factors that would negatively impact us. I mean, first of all, you can see the rates right there on the sheet. I mean, each customer, an extra $20 out of their pocket just because we're served by a different company. Obviously, WPS is an investor-owned. They're a large utility. The likelihood of them having the staff they have here locally is unlikely, so their response times to outages would likely not be as fast as what ours is. Our staff obviously turn the dollars here locally. They live in the community, so they're going to go and support the local supply restaurants and businesses and such. So there's all those values. The pilot that we provide back to this body, the electric pilot is $1.3 million. If we were owned by WPS right now, that number would be about, Stevens Points was about $50,000. So you go from 1.25 million to 50,000, just like that, because you sell it. So there might be a short-term gain, but long-term, you're going to have that. In addition, WPS goes in for rate increases every other year. They're constantly changing the rate. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now I'm going to kind of jump a little bit to the current status. Bid documents have went out on the street for the project. They're in the hands of all the potential contractors. We reached out to Myron, which I'll talk about a little bit more later on, reached out to all of the ones that are in their database. And you can see there's over 500. We also have a extensive list of local contractors that we tried to reach out as well to try to get them to bid. Obviously, we all know this is ran through state statutes. We follow the proper bidding laws. So it's not as though we can select local contractors. We have to select the lowest qualified bid, but we at least got the word out on the street that they're aware of the project, not pricing it bid like. Wisconsin Department of Safety and Professional Services, this kind of talks to what Josh was talking about earlier. This is plan review. So this is later this week, we'll have a plan review for the drawings. We're doing pre-qualification. It's something similar that the Board of Public Works does on an annual basis. We're doing that for this project. We're expecting the construction authorization from the state later this month. Bids are due just before Christmas. And then we're expecting, if everything comes together as we hope, bid and financial approval will go back to the commission for consideration on the 11th of January. And then the next evening, I would come back to this body for authorization for financial consideration of the project on the 12th. Talked a little bit about Myron. So MU is using Myron Construction as our construction manager. The city has used the construction manager on a number of projects. The current pool project has one, the library and so forth. The construction manager helps with the bidding process, but they also help with cost control, schedule, and handling the coordination of all the construction activities. The following are some of the cost control measures that we've completed through the summer months here and into the fall. And this list is just some of the major items that we've tried to take in consideration to control costs. You can see the first couple there talk about the transmission pole and some of the temporary items. If you remember, we had the phasing of our building set up with 2 phases. Well, there was some conflicts, so we were able to adjust those slightly. And you can see that that's an overall $300,000 savings. We're trying to reuse the existing emergency power generator that we have at the facility. I've listed as bid alternative there. It's just that in the bidding documents, we're using that as the base price, but we're also looking at new as well. So we understand what the both costs are. And we'll try to make sure that we take the best solution. We revised the roof system to basically provide the same structural strength, but look at some different materials. I can go on and on about these. One that was very shocking to me is, if you remember the video that we showed a number of months ago with a tour of the new facility, as you walk through, the ceiling tiles, we were trying to do like a clouded thing where you would see some of the under the building structure for the under the roof and so forth. So not a complete suspended ceiling as we have here. And unfortunately, that was a $93,000 adder, so that got scrapped pretty quickly in the process. But overall, you can see there's about $1 million of total impact that we've tried to take into consideration. Ultimately, it all comes down to the bids and when they come in. But we're obviously trying to position ourselves to be the most frugal as possible. The joint meeting that we had a few months ago, I think it showed that there's a need for some more communication and how we arrived at solutions that were selected, for the solution that was selected. So I want to get into that here for the next 2 slides. Overall, the process in general focused on the following objectives: looking for the best valued solution, address the issues, we've talked about that, the space, the ADA compliance, and so forth. Try to find a long-term solution. The current facility is around 50 years old, trying to find something, or design something and build something to be similar. Obviously have short-term space so that we're not crammed, so that we can expand and add on staff as we need to, or different equipment. And also have consideration for future growth. That's one of the challenges we currently have, that we didn't, it wasn't planned to allow for it to expand in the future, maybe up or out or wherever it might be. Over the next 50 years, things can change quite a bit. And obviously we want to make sure that if we do remain on the current site, that a cohesive solution was collected with the pool. In addition, for some of you that haven't been on the council for as long, there were a couple things that happened prior that I wanted to just highlight. One was the Facilities and Functionality Committee. This was made up mostly of city staff, and this was before my time in this role. But the goal of this committee was to review the different city functions, your police, your city hall, your fire, streets, and the utility, and see if there's any synergies there to have a facility that might make sense that combines some of those functionalities. The city staff, completed that along with utility staff, and while they looked at multiple arrangements, the recommendation, at least from the utility perspective, was that it stay a standalone facility as it has been, just from the fact that the way we deal with customers, why customers come see us, and the magnitude of the equipment made the most sense to stay singular. And then the last thing is the pool committee. I think, Justin highlighted the pool a little bit earlier in the evening. And I'll talk about the pool a little bit later on as well, but in 16-17 was really when there was a committee put together that kind of determined or made a recommendation on where the pool should be long-term. I know they looked at, I think, over to 20 or 30 sites. Number of them obviously not where it is now and where it is, and ultimately where it is what was chosen. And I think that has a big impact on the utility and the process that we've made as well. So I want to just get into, at a high level, some of the options that were considered by the utility and the utility commission. The first one there is an east side warehouse. Basically, there was a facility that we looked at trying to purchase, expand it, remodel it, and add on to it. It was located on the east side of town. Unfortunately, as I've heard this body say many times, as soon as you hear the city come and knock on the door for a property, the dollar signs start coming. So unfortunately, that option was dropped because we weren't able to come to a reasonable price for the property. Existing site with a pool space. So as part of the pool committee, one of the things that was talked about and discussed is if the pool was to remove, how would the utility expand? What would it look like? So that was an option that was looked at. Obviously, with the pool staying where it was, that option didn't go any further. A split solution. So what we did is we looked at basically keeping operations where the existing facility is, remodel and add some space to it. And then I actually looked at a downtown location for more of our customer service and some of our administration. The reason being behind that is, as you know, we have 3,300 customers every month that come to our facility, either in person to the drop box or actually into the facility. And the thought process was if we redirected them downtown, maybe that helps with some of the foot traffic. Unfortunately, it created a lot of challenges. Unfortunately, downtown facilities aren't really meant for our type of operation and how a layout would work optimally. Parking and traffic was a consideration and concern as well. Not sure if it may detract from the normal core type businesses that are located downtown, more of your restaurants, local shops. And you may remember before we talked about the objectives, and one of them was trying to get our staff in one location, and this obviously didn't meet that objective. And unfortunately, the downtown facility that we identified, at least initially, sold process, so that out of the radar. Another option we looked at is, as you may know, we own about 20 acres or so on the north end of town by the McMillan substation and east of the water treatment facility. We looked at building a complete new facility there. As you know, I think some of you have talked about the sledding that goes on up there. That creates some challenges as far as sloping, and there's a transmission line and some underground water main lines in there that would create some challenges. We all know how busy McMillan Street is, and having our big trucks pulling out on McMillan Street probably isn't the best long solution. Obviously, relocating has an impact on both customers and employees. And one thing that came up in the process is the existing facility is unsaleable due to its location being by the substation, all the other infrastructure that's there. And it's obviously obsolete, a building since it's not a code. So if we were to sell it, someone would be responsible to take care of those measures. And I think the biggest drawback or positive of that site really is its ability to maybe be a future renewable energy site. It has the potential for solar panels at some point, being that it's so located so close to the substation, and obviously it's not really buildable for any other purpose. And we looked at the existing site remodel, and this was a cohesive solution. This was working with the pool as they're doing their expansion and updating. We would remodel the existing space and add additional office and garage space. Obviously, it allows us to reuse some of the existing outdoor. We have a tin shed, as we call it, in the back, and we already have the bunkers made up for all the water main and the poles, some of the other material that we use. I think we've all gone through remodel projects. They obviously they have the ability to have a financial risk. Sometimes you start breaking into knocking down walls and stuff, you're not sure what you might find. It limits our ability for future growth and expansion opportunities just on how the site is structured and how things would have to be built. It's a challenge to meet today's code requirements in a structure that's 50 years old. In the bathroom example that I mentioned there, I think as you think about it, our restrooms weren't built to ADA compliant, so they would need to be larger ADA compliant. So if they need to be larger, that means the walls on the perimeter of the restroom have to be moved. And obviously some of those would go into offices and storage spaces, and that would be fine. It might make some of those areas smaller, but it also goes into hallways. And now you start going into hallways, well, now that's going to affect the walls on the other side, and now you're starting a domino effect of just you're taking everything and moving everything. So it becomes very, that's where the cost comes in. And this cost was slightly less than the option selected. And I think one thing to keep in mind is, you're talking about remodeling, but then we're also talking about building twice that in square footage to be able to accommodate everything. So that's why you see that the cost is only slightly less than what was selected. And then finally, building new on the current site, working with the pool, building the new spaces, demoing the existing facility in a phased approach so it doesn't minimizes the impact of both our employees and our customers. optimize the layout, and achieves all the objectives that I reviewed earlier, including the ability to expand decades from now if it's ever needed. Some of the approvals that occurred and some of the different aspects back in February of 19, the commission directed staff to focus on new when they started looking at the cost of new versus remodel. Back in April of 19, we had a joint meeting between this body and the commission and talked about the building project, where it was at, and some of the timeline that was in front of us. In the June of 19, we reviewed both the offsite and onsite, and the commission directed staff to focus with the onsite option, as the benefits of the onsite solution was more economical. We're unable to identify a use for the existing facility for another city function or sale if it was vacated. And ultimately, it was less disruptive for our customers and employees long term. And then finally, in January of this year, the commission approved the current design. One more slide before I do that. I just want to point reference to where I was sitting in the audience. That red and blue binders that you can see, that's about 1,000 pages. Those are the spec documents for the project that are out on the street right now. So your plumbing, your HVAC, electric, steel, concrete, all the different aspects in there. And then the drawing set, that's the small drawing set. That's of almost 200 pages worth of different drawings. Again, account all those items. So those are the things that many hours have been put in by different engineering teams and my staff and I in reviewing and re-reviewing and trying to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. So big thing, why now? Long overdue. This is something that as I've gotten into this role, I heard some of you just say, you guys have been talking about this for so long. Let's just either move forward or take it off the table. Uncertainty on the pool location really hampered our decision ability. And ultimately, the decision to put the pool where it is gave us the clarity we needed to move forward with the project. And obviously, we worked together, Justin's team and mine, to make sure that we've made a solution that's going to best fit the city long term at that site. We've talked about our finances in previous meetings. We're in a good spot to address the need. At the same time, borrowing rates are forecasted favorably. They're all-time lows. And, not approving funding does not solve the need. It just kicks the can down the road. We waste money in the form of the sunk costs. I just showed you the documents that have been put together. Like I said, there are numbers of hours that were put into putting those documents together. We run the risk of higher financing costs as the markets rebound. And obviously, every year that we delay, inflation drives construction costs higher.
All right, questions for Nick? Mr. Witzel.
Thank you. Could you just really quickly tell us what the estimated total cost of the project is?
The estimated total cost that the body was $17.5 million.
That's million with an M?
Correct.
Okay.
That did not include the potential solar solution on the rooftop.
Okay, and it looks like from some of your documents that that's actually going to be down a little bit with some of the cost savings that you're looking to try to incorporate.
I'm working diligently, but until the bids come in, I can't really, it's hard to speculate.
Sure. If I may.
Please.
All right. You said that the rate estimate that you were showing us was estimated after a rate increase would occur due to this project. If you could touch on a couple of things here. First of all, and I know the answer, but I just want to make sure that the public is aware. When I get my electric bill, it's a whole lot more than $65. So if you could just touch on what else am I paying? And then also, if you could touch on when you would anticipate any kind of a rate increase would be implemented in conjunction with the construction project.
Sure. So every month we send out a bill to all of our customers. City residents, they see a bill that includes their electric, which may also include area lighting or street lighting, or area lighting, I should say, if they have like a light that is dedicated just to their home or business. They also are charged their water, which includes fire protection charge, which provides the ability for us to make sure our facilities are adequate to support fires for our fire department. And then lastly, the wastewater. All of those charges are on a typical bill. And as far as the rate increase goes, we have to go through the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin. They mandate all of our rates. They look at all of our books on an annual basis, and anytime we go in for a rate case, we would start construction on the project in 21 into 22, complete it in 22. In 22, we would go to the rate state and ask them for a rate change. And they usually take 9 to 12 months for a rate change. So we would forecast sometime in late first or second quarter of 2023.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Further questions? Mr. Butke.
First of all, I got to commend Justin and Nick and the staff because with other directors in place, there was a lot of digging in the heels, and I'm glad you guys worked it out. And
You didn't see him in the sling the other day, did you?
Is that what it took? But one thing, we're talking about COVID and all this. One thing I would hope that, we always come up with all these different codes and stuff. I would like to see, and maybe you have it, the doors entering the place, motion doors. Because even before the pandemic, just with the general flu, people touching doorknobs and so on, common colds, there's a lot of that. So that's one thing that would be nice if the people in charge, and I'm not talking locally, that would make that provision there because it saves a lot of.
Yeah, we actually optioned that feature. It's not the touchless, it's more those round buttons. So you'd have to hit your elbow or something.
Okay.
But it's, what I've been told is between 5,000 to 7,500 per door for that to be added. So
that's better than having to pull.
Yes, it is.
Any further questions for Nick? And I can't see, Ing, can you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because I don't see all the,
Sorry about
there
that.
we go. All right. Any further questions from the council? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you.